This is the heater that I removed from Victoria, the vintage cab-over engine Ford C8000 truck. Now the core is good, it didn't leak, but there was no power to the motor. I don't know if the motor works or not. Much of the electrical in this truck had been disconnected or cobbled together. There was originally a speed control system in it that I guess acted like a low-speed cruise control. So when they were doing road striping in the truck, it would regulate the speed. And when they took out a lot of that wiring, I think they disconnected some things unintentionally. Anyway, one of those was the heater. So the fan didn't work. We could pull the cable and warm water, the coolant flowing through this and the little vent coming through would warm the cab a little bit. But I had different plans to change out the coolant heater for a Webasto diesel-fired heater for a few reasons. I guess while I have this out, I should show you this setup. And it actually worked really well. So it's got the louvers to close that off. And on the back side of this was facing forward. So behind this is a big opening that just gets fresh air from behind the grill. I'll show you what I did to address that now that I've got the Webasto in there. The core was in good shape. I'm definitely keeping this. And then on the front, it had these kind of cool doors. So you see the fan in there. Definitely an old school fan. And then this was the defroster blower. I'm going to repurpose this just to take warm ambient air, slightly heated air from down below the dash, and blow it up through the defroster vents. You don't want to take heated air directly from a Webasto or one of those diesel-fired heaters and blow it on your windshield. It's just too hot and it can crack your windshield apparently. But I just thought this was kind of a cool old thing. Unfortunately, it just takes up a lot of room and I've got some different plans. That other heater was in this space. Sorry about the glare. That other heater was in this space and it came down to about here. And these were the holes, which I've just got temporarily covered with the aluminum tape. The holes for the heater loops, the coolant loops into the core here. So I took the mounting plate that came with the Webasto and rolled a bend into it here and then welded it on down here and up on the top onto a steel plate. Now this plate's pretty big because it's designed to cover that hole so I don't get cold air blowing in. I've still got the vent over here, but I wanted this blocked off. So this is the intake for the combustion chamber and it's sealed around there so it'll get nice fresh air supply from outside. This is the exhaust and I will make a little heat shield to go around this so nobody burns their foot. These get pretty hot. And then down below, I'm actually going to point this back at the engine. So in the morning when it's cold, and it does get cold here, I can come out here and fire up the heater, use this to warm the engine a little bit, heat up the cab, make it nice and toasty warm in here, just without having to run the engine. Also, if I'm traveling somewhere and I decide to sleep in here, which I have done before, I can keep the cab warm without having to run the engine all night. Over on this side, I put the switch just to control it. I didn't want it in the middle of the dash because I want to be able to come over here and start the truck maybe from outside, crank up the heater. So this panel was here. This right now is my high and low beam switch. I will eventually move that to a proper foot switch. This is the parking brake, the air brake, parking brake on and off control. And then there was a switch over here for the amber strobe lights up on the top. And then there was a hole here for the light or some kind of an indicator LED that I think was part of the strobe light circuit. Anyway, so I repurposed that hole and just put the Webasto controller over here so that'll work really well. I can reach in, crank this up, come back in 10 minutes, the cab will be all nice and toasty warm. Hopefully the engine will be a little bit warmer, start it up and be good to go. As far as wiring on these diesel heaters go, it's pretty easy. There's the one cable, this one that runs over to the controller on the other side of the steering wheel column there. There's a power supply. Oh, let me find the end. Anyway, red is the positive, black is the negative, and I will wire that into the fuse block down here. And then a pair of wires that go to the pump. So the pump here I will mount down underneath somewhere and then run a line from the pump through the fuel filter, the diesel fuel filter up here to the intake for the combustion chamber underneath the heater. So I'll run that down here and underneath. And then the fuel tank is down here. I've got my fuel line and a return line on the fuel tank, and then there was another port here for a vent. I'm going to relocate the vent, maybe even up into the cap. By the way, I've never seen a fill cap that big. That thing's 4.5 inches across at least. I'm used to the 2-inch diesel caps. But anyway, I'm going to turn this into the fuel pickup location, and the pickup tube will stop a couple inches above the bottom of the, a couple inches above the bottom of the tank. I want to make sure that I can never run the diesel tank out and get stranded somewhere. There is a port down here, and I could draw from the bottom of the tank, but that's a little bit hazardous. If I were to bust that off or something, then I'm going to run my tank out. And of course, from here, there's no real good way to regulate how low I can draw the tank. This needs a bit of reinforcement. I'm going to add some standoffs, spacers with P-clips down here to just keep this from bouncing around. But I've got the fuel line protected. I'm going to relocate the fuel filter and put in a more skookum line from here back to a fuel filter, back to the pickup tube in the tank. And then I can put a P-clip in here, like I said, with the standoff on this side and that side just to support everything. But at least until I can get those, it's not going anywhere. Installation is done. Well, not totally done. I still got to make a little heat shield just to protect this from getting kicked down here and make that look kind of nice. And then I'm going to do some duct work over here. But the heater's in. The fuel is primed. It works well. Let me bring you around the front. And you can see the exhaust pipe comes down here. Wow, that shows up better than I can see it. Let me see. So I just made a little bracket and attached it. And then the exhaust pipe just blows down here. It is blowing back towards the engine, but it's clear of anything that might melt. There you go. And I've got no perforations through the floor, so I'm not going to die from carbon monoxide poisoning. I will cover these permanently, but until then, at least, none of that's getting into the cab. Anyway, works really well. There's the hula girl. Got to keep her warm. This thing first starts, I guess, venting the chamber, and then you hear it start to ramp up. And when it does that and the igniter is warm and it starts spitting the diesel in there, it sounds like a little mini turbine jet engine taking off. I think it's kind of cool. And I've got hot air coming out. One note on these, you want to make sure you shut them off with the control and not by putting in some kind of separate power switch. I shut it off, but it is still blowing. The fan is just running to cool off the outside of the combustion chamber and the fins in there until it gets down to a safe temperature where it can shut off and not retain a bunch of residual heat in here, which might melt components.